Hello and welcome to another edition of Full Scottish. Today we are in West Kilbride at the Barony Centre. West Kilbride is the craft town of Scotland, and today among the topics we're discussing is the creative industry's role in the economic regeneration of communities in Scotland. Our guests today include Maggie Broadley, who is the Creative Executive of Craft Town Scotland.
We also have MP for Inverclyde, Ronnie Cowan, who was elected in 2015 with a majority of more than 11,000, and product designer and entrepreneur Dagfinn Axness.
Music today is from Aidan Mooney, an Arcadian singer and guitarist who's currently studying at the Royal Conservatoire in Glasgow. And our first item, as usual, is the newspaper review. So we'll, first of all, Michelle and I will guide you through the headlines in the papers this morning.
So today's Observer, and we will come on to talk about this, is Corbyn. My deputy's talking nonsense and he knows it, apparently.
The Sunday Mail, and again we'll be talking about this story later on. This is a mother who's been jailed after, first of all, suggesting that she was a victim of domestic abuse and then having difficulties giving evidence in court.
We have Scottish Mail on Sunday. I think it's the only one that's managed to get Super Mo on the front page after his performance in the Olympics in the early hours of this morning.
Sunday Herald has a story about off-agenda today, but it's an interesting story. Exclusive Scotland now are the go-to country for global arms dealers.
And Sunday Times Scotland today, Brexit will be delayed, apparently, until the end of 2019. And that leads us quite nicely, I think, into the first topic for today. We're going to be talking about Brexit. And this delay, Ronnie, is it favourable for Scotland if we're looking to IndyRev 2?
Who knows? One would have thought that during the entire Brexit campaign, the Leave campaign, was a worked-up plan that said, when we vote this way, this is the path we're going to go down. We, at least in the decency in the Scottish referendum, had a 500-page white paper worked up. Wasn't the complete article, we know that. But there's nothing. And to now see the Brexiters drop the reins and walk away from this campaign and leave it to people like Theresa May who campaign to remain, to negotiate or exit, basically means whether it's Article 40 and Article 50, we don't know, and I'm presuming at this moment in time they don't know either. We've got to go Article 50 very seriously and say, is this a good thing or is it not? Is it a good thing for the United Kingdom? That's the role, it's the government of the United Kingdom, it's a good thing for the United Kingdom. If they don't trigger Article 50, then it means England and Wales can negotiate their exit from Europe, which leaves Scotland, Northern Ireland and, very interestingly, Gibraltar in Europe, which makes the border between Gibraltar and Spain, as is. It makes the border between Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, as is, and then gives an issue with a border in Scotland and England, which presumably we could work out because we're sensible people. If they trigger Article 50, it's a completely different ballgame. All of that gets turned on its head. Where that's going to go is who's talking to who, whose heart's in it, and what timescale they're now going to subject us to. We heard all the campaigns, the uncertainty these things bring to us. Well, we've got more uncertainty because we simply don't have any cohesive plan that we're working to.
Maggie, is this where you expected to be this long after the EU vote?
It's not at all, and I have to hold my hands up and say I was extremely disappointed at the vote for various reasons. One is the impact it can have on Scottish rural economies, which I'm part of the Ayrshire Leader Local Action Group, which is a mechanism for dispersing European funding to rural communities. The uncertainty of where we are now, to have that extended is further damaging for communities who would have been hoping to access this money now, basically. So there's still a level of uncertainty as to how that is going to pan out, and that uncertainty isn't good for anyone. Also creative industries, cross collaboration across borders. For projects we've had hopes of working with a project in Estonia. We're not sure where that lies now in terms of a cultural exchange. So again, the uncertainty is poor, and I would hope that people could begin to move this along. Whether you're disappointed or not in the result, you need to know what the position is.
Although the reasons that Theresa May gives for the delay, one of them is that there are French elections, there are German elections, and you can't negotiate unless you know who you're negotiating with. It seems a bit strange. I'm not quite sure.
Well, there's always going to be elections.
Yes.
It came over the last 4 or 5 years. There's been elections every year. And it'll continue that way. if we take every single country in the EU,
It'll
so we
always be
can't
election.
negotiate when there's going to be an election, there's always going to be an election.
Although, I mean, the cynic might say that if your main aim was not to trigger Article 50 at all, then that's a good excuse. Another reason she's giving is that the new Brexit department won't be ready in time, and Liam Fox won't be able to put into play some of the things that are supposed to happen.
And behind that, how is the civil service going to man this Brexit department? Right now we don't have the skills to do that unless we bring the people back from Europe to man the Brexit exit strategy, which is the proverbial turkeys voting for Christmas here.
Who do we need to actually run that department? What kind of skills do our civil servants not have?
We need people who are immersed in Europe, people who know the ins and outs of the relationships built there already, who can have grown-up conversations with people without becoming too partisan, who can understand that these things take a time and a duration and it's done in the right will with the right intent, and these people by and large are already working out there in Europe.
Presumably, though, Theresa May's got a balancing act. I mean, there will be people, Maggie, that will be saying to her, I voted to leave. I voted to leave because I want to leave, and I don't want you to faff around any further, any longer.
I think there's a significant minority, if you want, who didn't vote to leave, and I think it's really important that this is done in whatever fashion it ends up, it's done very carefully and considered, because the impact on Scotland and on UK and the rest of Europe could be significant and long-term and detrimental. So whilst I am arguing for them to move as swiftly as they can, that doesn't mean that it should just be ill-considered and you just jump in there. I mean, I think that whole campaign about leaving Europe kind of is a case in point, that here we have politicians arguing for something that it would appear to just the lay person that they didn't actually want, and now here we are left in this awful position. So I think it's really important that whilst we do it as quickly as we can, it's considered and we get the right people with the right skills to deliver.
Because maybe one of the most important aspects for Scotland is the position that EU nationals living here now find themselves in. I think Nicola Sturgeon and the Cabinet are meeting some of those people next week. Presumably they are looking for some peace of mind about their own future.
Absolutely.
How much can they get?
Families that gave us the compliment of coming to live here in Scotland and have had children here and are growing up here and have maybe established business here, are part and parcel of the fabric of our community, are now very concerned that they're going to be turfed out to go back to, particularly for their kids, to go back to a country that they probably don't even know at all. And I think the goodwill to come here and invest their lives in Scotland, and they are now very concerned that somewhere down the line that's not going to be a situation in which they can continue with. Yeah.
Because in Sunday Times Scotland today, Gillian Bowditch is writing about Scotland's immigration situation and the fact that Scotland's population is going up, and the only reason it's going up is because of immigration.
Absolutely. We've always, it is healthy, it is very healthy, both economically and culturally, to have people from different backgrounds, different cultures coming to your country, and vice versa. And even within our own country, we have had migration from the Highlands to the Lowlands. These things are important elements of developing a strong economy, culture, society. And it's humanity and decency has to be brought to bear in this circumstance, not just dogma and policy driving everything. And Scots, I believe, as a nation, have those values very high in the Scottish psyche, and I think we should make a big noise and make sure that, as our politicians have done, and make sure that people who have come to this country know that Scotland and Scottish people welcome them very much.
Because this hasn't just been an SNP thing. Of course, Jack McConnell, when he was First Minister, a Labour Party politician, for those who can't remember that far back, he tried to encourage people to come to Scotland to live and to set up home. And of course, one of those families who did just that, the Brain family, are now faced with leaving, or being kicked out, to be honest.
As Mike said, I believe it's part of the Scottish psyche, that we are that sort of nation, that we welcome people into our country. And we're also very good at going and living in other countries as well.
Yeah,
Scots all over the world,
absolutely.
We have emigrated, migrated across the globe. But we've always had that. open door policy, if I can call it. We've always been welcoming to every individual. Of course, I'm not saying everybody in Scotland is wonderful about this, but by and large, the Scottish psyche does say, come, enjoy, be part of our community.
Yeah.
Land reform.
Indeed.
Moving on, a slightly contentious issue in Scotland. There's a story in today's Sunday Herald, Ronnie, you're quoted in it. It talks about this absurdly outdated land ownership system that Scotland has, where, for example, there are 750,000 acres of land that we don't know who owns. What was your take on the story?
My take on the story was that this land, first of all, the 750,000 acres is hidden behind umbrella companies and offshore companies, and it's very hard to get to the root of that and say, well, actually, whose pocket is this bit of land in? And that's completely unacceptable. We can't do anything with these large swathes of land until we know who owns them. And we want to put the land to good use. We're not per se against private land ownership. If the land's been used properly, I think the island of Egg is a great example, where they had absentee landlords for a number of years, and the island wasn't allowed to progress because they didn't own their own land. They bought the island, and they've progressed with it enormously. The population has increased by 40%. It wasn't huge to start off with, but it's increasing, it's doing the right things, and they're bringing in new people, and that island is thriving. So it's got this wonderful renewable energy sector within that island, and that's an example when we take private land ownership, put it into the hands of people in a community. I mean, who does that land mean more to? Is that a private landlord sitting on it, land banking on it for however many years, or does it mean more to the people who live and grow in that community on a day in, day out basis? And it has to be the latter. So if we can, in some way, shape or form, move those large swathes of land into the hands of the communities that rely on that land, they will make more of it. And the idea that we can ring fence a piece of land and say this part of Scotland is not open to the people who depend upon it most is just absolutely absurd. And we've got this situation over a long period of time. It'll take time to reverse that. It's certainly a path we have to go down.
Maggie, you mentioned earlier the challenges facing rural Scotland in the Brexit conversation. Land reform must be one of the big things for people that live outside the cities.
It certainly is. Our culture's littered with examples of land being taken from those who know how to manage it best. I'm a crofter's granddaughter. I know how the crofting system worked before there was interference. We need to have trust in local communities and people to know how to manage their own land. We have to give them the support to do that, and when it's required, because there's that book, The Poor Have No Lawyers, we do need access to good legal advice and so on as well. But it's, again, this is a moral obligation to return land to the people who need it most and who will benefit from it most. And what you then do is you create a network of empowered communities, and we have a much stronger economy, society, culture. For me, it makes absolute eminent common sense to do this.
The land campaign that was launched by, Moan for Independence, Commonweal, you name it, These people are backing it. And in the National earlier on this week, we saw a kind of revisitation of some of the main areas that had problems with taxation and various other issues, and to see what had happened in a year, and virtually nothing had happened within that year. A good campaign, but can these campaigns actually achieve radical change? I know it's a long question, I know, but the SNP conference, the conference itself asked the leadership to look again at its land reform strategy. So clearly it's a very hot political topic.
Yeah, that was the Aberdeen conference last
That's right.
autumn.
That's right.
I was at that conference, I was at that vote, and I was delighted to see the way the party membership stood up and said, this is enough. We've got to look at this more seriously. And that evening, in fact, there was an event off campus. I think it was Andy Whiteman, Robin McAlpin and Leslie Rutherford were at it. And it was great to see the boost that gave them. They were absolutely buzzing that night because I don't think they expected it to happen. Yeah, but it did, and I thought it was a huge vote of confidence in what they're trying to achieve as well. And I think within the Scottish National Party, we do believe that our grassroots for party kind of have an influence on the policies we work towards, but as you say, it doesn't happen quickly. We've got into this situation over a long period of time, and it's long and it's complicated, and we know that the people who own these lands are vastly wealthy people, and the vastly wealthy people have got lawyers behind them. So you can't just rush at it and gung ho and say, this is a great idea, make it happen. It has to be picked apart piece by piece, and a solution has to be found. You can't just rip the land off of people and say that's not yours, and that's it. Sort of takes our argument and turns it in its head. There has to be a solution where we can work towards making it beneficial for people to say your land comes back into community use.
Of course, by the time the SNP discusses the issue at its next conference, we don't know whether there's going to be a Labour Party even to take any action on this at all. In the Sunday Times today, the Observer today, Jeremy Corbyn has given an interview where he's very critical of his deputy, Tom Watson. What do you think, Maggie, when you look at the disarray the Labour Party is currently in? I
am almost speechless, and I have to say, I've always been very concerned as a small child. Social justice was very high on my agenda, though I might not have called it that. And to see a party that purports to be all about social justice tearing itself apart, which is in effect what is happening, is a difficult thing to watch. I would say, a socialist nationalist, so part of me might smile and say, well, this might bode well for us, but I don't think in terms of democracy, and I don't think in terms of representing, and I hate to use the phrase ordinary people, but that it's poor that we're not getting, we need, and I would be a supporter, I dare say, of a lot of the ideas that might come out of the Corbyn camp, but we do need passion to put that across, I think, and feeling and passion are not wrong in politics, and I think sometimes we've got too much calculation going on.
I think also watching that kind of argument, internal fighting, kind of detracts from what happened in Scotland during the independence referendum and since then, where more and more people became engaged in politics and have this desire to do politics differently. Do you think what's going on in the Labour Party and people's disenfranchisement with all of that will impact on those who were boosted politically by the happenings of the past couple of years?
There's two sides to that. I, as an SNP MP, in one level should be cock-a-hoop with the way the Labour Party are behaving. But in my heart, I'm genuinely not. This Labour Party, as I was born and brought up in Greenock, and the Labour Party were the party that fought for social justice, the party of the people. And they're invaluable sometimes in Scottish history, and they've allowed themselves to get into this situation. So yeah, as an SNP MP, there's bonuses for me to say that they're in complete disarray, and maybe it's harder for people to imagine just what damage they're doing to their party down at Westminster. He couldn't write it. I can't remember the chap's name, the guy that wrote the Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. He said that the political satire was dead.
Real life is worse.
Yeah, you couldn't write this stuff. And it is seriously that bad. But the part of me that feels sad about this is that because it detracts from us having one solid voice where we can go and hold the Tories to account. When we're trying to march through a voting lobby and think, in times gone by, we would have brought the entire Labour Party down there with us, and right now they're either sitting on their hands or a handful of them are being brave enough to stand up and follow us through a lobby. And that makes our job down there, in many aspects, much more difficult because the Labour Party is in this state of disarray, complete disarray.
Maggie, when Scotland, it was said, would have voted Labour if a monkey had been standing. Now, that's not the case.
No, that's not the case.
In fact, the opposite is the case. So, when did you start seeing a shift in that?
I think not enough of a shift, sadly. I think this has been happening slowly for some time, and I think just momentum has gathered. I think a lot of Labour supporters must have found extreme difficulty at watching some Labour MPs side with Tories in the independence. I won't say debate because not all the information that came out was informed, but I think that must have been, that might have helped kind of solidify or strengthen some of that feeling, and I think that's only been magnified by Brexit. I know of people who voted against independence but are shocked Brexit. But I think it's been a slow burn, and I think there's been things about entrenched views even within the Labour Party, perhaps decades ago, not having moved on.
The specific issue that Corbyn is reacting to in the Observer interview is the claim by Tom Watson that the party has been subject to entryism, and the people have been trying to, the people that have joined it are Trotskyites and are entering it to do bad things to the party. Bad things to the party being translated as voting for Jeremy Corbyn, its leader. However, I mean, how is it in Westminster watching MPs and their attitude to the leader of their own party?
Oh, it's interesting, but to go very quickly me back to, I think the decline of the Labour Party started with Tony Blair. I think people woke up to that. So almost as soon as the Blair honeymoon was over, I think people in Scotland started getting disenfranchised from the Labour Party as they knew. And then we had the Iraq War, and then we had the independence referendum where people stood shoulder to shoulder with the Tory party, which was just inconceivable at one point. And then with Brexit, so it's built upon that. But right now, watching the Labour Party down there, you see a Prime Minister Question Time every Wednesday morning, which is an absolute Punch and Judy show. And it's, the Tory, the Tory party at the time will come in and they all cheer. It's like, here goes, it's theatre. When the Corbyn stands, they don't. And in some ways, maybe that's a more grown-up way to behave. It's just like, you should really be back in your gags. That's a pressure cooker there and there. They're faced on live television, going head-to-head against the leader of the government. He wants his party, but he needs their support right there and then. And very often you hear him saying those things, there's a silence. There's a horrible silence. You think, they're not buying into what he's saying. Yeah.
So what happens, Ronnie, if, as is being predicted, Jeremy Corbyn wins this leadership contest? What happens to the MPs who don't back him? Are they not supposed to be representing the people that are voting?
I think the only thing that can happen is they'll get pushed away from, obviously they won't be in the front benches, they'll get pushed back and back and back.
Are there enough to bring
we're
onto the front
into
benches?
wave 3, I think, now of a couple of guys down there, Paul Flynn and Kelvin Hopkin, who are Labour through and through and through, and they're now front bench spokespeople. Paul's 82, and he said, I've waited a long time for this opportunity, and he has. He's not even his cup of tea. I had a lot of time for Paul. But yeah, there is this situation where they're actually running out of people, because it's not just your front benches. If you look at the size of the government, which they should be matching up to, you've got to have your opposition spokesperson, but you've got to have the people behind them as well, and you've got your PPS behind that. So it's a large number of people, and the question would be, while the Labour Party stays together as the Labour Party, they can get those numbers, maybe narrow, but they can get them. If they actually split as a party, there's a large question as to whether they could actually form an opposition down there. Is that going to push us towards a general election? I hope not, personally, because I don't want to go through another election campaign very soon. But I think that again, everything would be up in the air again. I think people are looking at some sort of period of stability where you've got a solid government, a solid opposition, going at it, working things out, and hammering out solutions. And the situation in the Labour Party is taking us further and further away from that. Which is, to my mind, another reason why people in Scotland are saying, look, let's just do this for ourselves. People aren't doing it. We can't rely on Westminster now to look after the interests of the people of Scotland and not look after the interests of the people of England anymore. So we're getting further and further down that list.
One of the most interesting stories in the newspapers this morning is the story of the mother and wife who complained that her husband had hit her and then subsequently claimed that it wasn't domestic abuse. She was in court. She did not answer the questions that the judge asked her, and she was jailed for 14 days, although I think she subsequently only served 4. And now, while we can't discuss or comment on the individual merits or otherwise of the case against her husband, Maggie, what do you think that this message, what do you think that this decision sends a message to people who may be considering taking action or complaining about domestic abuse?
I think it is a horrendous decision. I think the complexities of what happens to an individual who has been abused within a domestic situation are being swept aside in this with the judge's decision. And it doesn't matter what class you come from, this happens across all society.
I think that's a reference. What you were alluding to there was a suggestion that the judge said that the woman concerned was a teacher and therefore was intelligent enough to be able to answer the questions.
And that misses the point entirely as to what abuse does to any individual, whether female or male, over a prolonged period of time. It also then, lets us ask the question, if you look at not just domestic abuse, but sexual assault, the depressingly low statistics consistently about these things being brought to court and successful prosecutions. And this kind of decision will, I know this will make women who are in a very, very vulnerable position at the moment not just think twice, but retreat back into a shell, which is where they go when they suffer such horrific circumstances within their own home.
So the prosecution would have known that she was likely to be a hostile witness because she tried to say to the police, it was a collision, it was an accident. So rather than force her into court, is there no other way that support could have been given to her, or she may have changed her mind because she was terrified?
But we don't know.
But we don't know.
I think the message I'm taking from this is that this person's been brave enough to bring the prosecution or whatever, and people who take domestic abuse cases to court have had to galvanise themselves enormously because the pressure they're under just to sit down and shut up and just take it is enormous. And if this case, by ridiculing this woman the way she has been, if that stops one person stepping forward who could have got himself out of a violent relationship by taking it forward, if that stops that happening, that's a terrible legacy of what this judge has done.
Because we don't know, of course. We need to say we don't know whether this woman was abused or whether she says that she wasn't. So there's no active court case anymore concerning that.
It's the way in which the judge handled it. To ridicule the woman in this case. Other people are looking at this and I don't know this case at all. It's only what I've read in the front page of the paper today. But if somebody's sitting there thinking, I'm at a stage where I'm prepared to take a prosecution forward, it's now going to think, well, if I go in there and a judge is going to be so critical of my actions, of what I say and what I do, and I'm going to end up being the one who's in the wrong end of the law, if you like, then I'm just not going to take that case forward. And that's a terrible thing to happen. And
realistically, actually, the majority of cases who actually make false accusations relative to all of those that don't even get to prosecution and are genuine is extremely small, and it's the principle. We're not really discussing this particular case. It's that it should be made easier, more gentle, more comfortable for victims of domestic abuse to be encouraged or walked and talked through. I mean, you have Women's Aid, a charity who does amazing work across the country to try and support women and families in this position, and I'm sure this isn't something that they would welcome either. It's a long process and it can have peaks and troughs, and you should be recognising that.
I think campaigners are arguing that it is a ridiculous situation that a woman who is involved in a case like this ends up going to jail herself. And there seems to be a complete lack of common sense when that can be the result of that, and the judge really should have thought of a different outcome, regardless of the intricacies of this particular case.
Perhaps as well the fact that the sheriff was a female as well. You might have thought that there may have been more empathy towards a mother of two who was going to have to find childcare arrangements because she was going to spend, at the outset, 14 days in prison.
Indeed. Finally, in our newspaper review, the Olympics.
Yes.
Michelle, have you been
I have. I've actually
staying
been
up all night?
Not quite all night, but I've actually been really enjoying it. I've been watching sports that I wouldn't normally watch, like trampolining. Yeah.
Is that a sport?
Well, it is. And this young woman got a silver medal. She wasn't even pegged as being a medal hopeful, and yet performed on the day incredibly well. But
favourite moment, Maggie, so far?
I have to say that swimming.
Right.
I'm looking at swimming, but I hope my favourite moment is going to come sometime soon when Andy Murray wins a medal for tennis. But even if he doesn't, I'm still incredibly proud of what he's achieved. But I actually think there's a thing about the reporting and how it's being reported. Some other international news channels give a much broader view of all the medal winners across the country, across countries, and I'm very interested in what other nations have been doing too. So I think I admire anyone who has passion, dedication and commitment, whether that be in sport, which is being celebrated just now, or whether it's being in culture, the arts communities. I applaud that, and I always get rather emotional at it. So if Andrew wins, I'm out with tears.
Have you been gripped?
Yeah, I'm bleeding eyed. I was up about 3 o'clock this morning. You want to go to your bed thinking, well, I've got to go up and do this thing, but it does joy. As you say, it's a sport you don't normally get involved in. You find yourself watching. I'm not a great swimmer about any stretch of the imagination, so maybe I admire that greatly. There was a Danish girl when it was 50 metres freestyle. She obviously didn't expect to win it, and I like that. I always like the underdog thing. Yeah, it was great. These people who are defending their gold medals from 4 years ago, and all credit to them and their dedication to their sports, their disciplines. But when you get somebody who just peaks at that right moment, as the athletes do, they find that golden patch. If that happens to coincide with the Olympic Games, that's a performance of their life, and they come away with something like that. And we've seen it in a few events so far. The girl that won the tennis yesterday as well, she was from Puerto Rico, I think it was. She wasn't expecting to win it. She done 6-1, and you just see that emotion, because they're very disciplined in what they do to train to get to that level. At that moment of release, when they realise this is it, I've hit my goal, is fantastic. I love those moments with the Olympic Games. Yeah.
And it's the bouncing back as well. I mean, there was a collision cycling yesterday with the women, and this female cyclist was riding vertically right up the side of the velodrome. Incredible, she didn't come off her bike. And then you look at Mo Farah, who fell in his race and got up and still got to the end and won the gold medal. Did you were you late enough to watch that?
I saw Mo going through. I packed it in shortly after that, I think.
It's difficult for newspapers, the timing, because I think Mo got in the Mail, but I don't think he's got in it.
No, it wasn't in it.
Because it happens too late and newspapers are finished. So. However, thank you very much for the newspaper review. Now we are going to look at West Kilbride. We're going to look at West Kilbride as Craft Town in Scotland. We've been here all day and yesterday, so here is what we found.
We are in Studio 24, Craft Town, Scotland, and with Marion Kane, who's been our longest studio tenant, been here for almost 13 years. Marion's an award-winning silversmith and jeweller. The craft studios are a vital element in Craft Town, Scotland. They're dotted along the main street. They act as anchor points around which other businesses have set up or have continued to trade and operate. But they're really important because they give support to makers by providing studio accommodation, but also they then give a real flavour of what's going on in crafts, and it gives a limited opportunity, because these are working studios, so it gives a limited opportunity for public to come in Thursday, Friday, Saturday and buy work direct from maker and find out a wee bit more about the people behind these amazing pieces of work. So really, just if Marion could give us a little bit of a flavour about how she came to be in West Kilbride and how she's found the experience of being involved with Craft Town Scotland and West Kilbride as a community.
Okay, I first came here, it must be 13 years ago, as you said. I was looking for a studio and found it really difficult. Originally I was looking for Glasgow, and I was on a waiting list, couldn't get anything. But myself and my partner were actually looking to move to this area, and I thought, well, I'd heard about the project, and I'd actually been part of the feasibility study. And I thought, well, I may as well go and have a look and see what's going on. And that's when I thought, well, the studios are actually really good. Do I want to take on one that's open to the public as well, which is different to what would be norm for a craft maker? So I thought, well, I'll give it a go and see. And it actually worked out very well for me. Yes, initially it was difficult working and having to deal with the public, but actually it's now, I just know now how to manage it all, and yeah, 13 years later I'm still here.
I'd like to introduce Ange Sewell to you, who is the designer, maker and weaver behind Weft Blown. I'm going to let Ange actually tell you a bit about her slightly unusual route into weaving and making, and how she came to be at Crafttown Scotland studio.
Yes, I had a bit of an unusual start. I actually have a science background, so I studied geology and meteorology at university, and then I went on to work for the Met Office for 2.5 years and trained to be a fully qualified weather forecaster with Met Office. And then I went through various jobs and then decided to become self-employed and started off doing photography. And as things have gone on, I take photos of a landscape, as you can see at the back here, and I now weave them into various hand-woven items, like the lovely scarf that Maggie's modelling here. But it's all influenced by the weather and the different changes it makes in landscapes and different textures. And I also use a lot of British wools as much as possible, and sort of wools that I know exactly the provenance of, and to make sure they're soft enough to wear, and different breeds as well to sort of help promote all that too.
I mean, one of another benefit to the studio is that you're actually in with another group of makers and creative people. So Ange often collaborates with other studios and uses some of their
yes,
materials.
as you caught me just coming down the street from Old Maiden Aunt Yarns. She's a dyer, hand dyer up the road, and I use a lot of her yarns for my weaving. In fact, some of her yarns are sitting on loom just now. I have also worked with Juniper and Jane, in fact Jane Hunter, textile artist, and I collaborated with her on geological maps of Ascent that she did for an exhibition last year, and it was exciting to do that because I'd actually mapped the geology of that 20 years ago on a university field trip, so that's been quite good fun too.
And what we've also done, we received funding from Creative Scotland, and we ran a Cathro craft incubator programme, and that was looking at makers at various points in their career and looking at how they could develop their creative practice, but also how they could improve profitability and still kind of get that work-life balance. So Ange also took part in that.
And it's been great actually. Last year has changed how I work, and having that help with the mentors especially that were on the programme, and the different days that we had with different talks coming in, it helped me focus
and so we were dead lucky to arrive.
I've also worked with Juniper and Jane, in fact Jane Hunter, textile artist, and I collaborated with her on geological maps of Ascent that she did for an exhibition last year, and it was exciting to do that because I'd actually mapped the geology of that 20 years ago on a university field trip, so that's been quite good fun too.
And what we've also done, we received funding from Creative Scotland, and we ran a Cathro craft incubator programme, and that was looking at makers at various points in their career and looking at how they could develop their creative practice, but also how they could improve profitability and still kind of get that work-life balance. So Ange also took part in that.
And it's been great actually. Last year has changed how I work, and having that help with the mentors especially that were on the programme, and the different days that we had with different talks coming in, it helped me focus my business and focus where I wanted it to go and how to get there. So in January this year I attended my first trade fair, and off the back of that I've got my work now in 10 stockists throughout the UK and one in England. I had interest from overseas too, and it's helped give me the confidence and grow the business further, which we've done with different lines that are coming in too, so it's been really good.
And I think that highlights a really important area, that there's creative development, but the economic impact and the benefit to West Kilbride, and then the ripples that go out further. So crafts as an art form, but also as part of creative industries, has an important economic and regeneration impact on it, and I think that's what all the makers in West Kilbride in general does show. This is Sam, and he's one half of Juniper and Jane. He's really busy today, so we're lucky. Well, he's really busy a lot of days, I have to say, but we're lucky to have nabbed him just shortly. So he has 150 clocks, Taris tweed hoop Clocks Originals, the one and only, to make, within the next few days for outlets and galleries across Scotland. So he's just going to get on with making these, and I'm going to ask him a few questions. Okay, Sam, how did you get into this? And maybe you could even chat to us a wee bit more about Juniper and Jane and how you've developed that as a brand and compared to what you're doing with our Scottish clocks.
Sure. Well, Jane and I met when we were working together. We were working for the local authority in Glasgow, and both realised that we had this creative streak. So it was kind of an organic thing. We hadn't really been doing anything creative within the council. So we're doing it in our spare time, and then certain things that we made caught attention of some people, and it kind of snowballed really. We decided that we would set up ourselves. We started Juniper and Jane as a company and started producing work that evokes our feelings of the kind of nature of Scotland. So textiles and printed textiles, and they now sell in shops all over the country. And the clocks, well, these kind of came about through Jane producing textile artwork using this embroidery hoop and the pieces of tweed, and it kind of just developed into a product which went kind of crazy. So that's what's keeping us really busy just now. So the brand Juniper and Jane is all about the outdoors. The clocks is a completely separate thing, known as the Scottish Clock Company, and Jane also produces work as an artist herself. So kind of busy from this one wee shop. There's quite a lot of things happening.
And what difference did it make actually getting out from? Because I remember you told me you were like snowed under with boxes and all sorts of things at home.
At home, it was dreadful. We had no space at all at home, and so we were dead lucky to arrive down here when there was a space. This studio was available. We just took the chance, and we've never looked back. It's brilliant. Now we've got this purpose-built area where we can produce things from. People can come in and see the work, and it's completely helped us by giving us exposure and helping us get in, open doors, and things that have come through Craft Town Scotland are amazing. I mean, Jane was sitting sewing at the Scottish Parliament one year. It was nuts.
I think though that the project's incredibly lucky to have people like yourselves who are really, really committed and are looking at this as well as a creative development, but are looking at ways and how they can support themselves and also the local economy, the wider economy, and that's a huge commitment, I think, from most people in studios here, that they're prepared to kind of have that interruption type thing, a commitment to it while still contributing and keeping on with their own work.
That's where we try to keep busy, but also we do try to support the local economy and the supplies that we're bringing in, and printing and things like that we're getting done. We're getting that all done locally, so we're trying to support local businesses as well. But it changes people's lives as well. I mean, we were both sitting absolutely mind-numbingly bored at the council without a creative outlet and really struggling and physically hurting yourself sitting at a computer all day. Now, you've no idea the difference. I've been able to stop taking drugs for my dodgy back, and now I'm up and about every day, constantly doing something different and interesting, and getting out there and speaking to people, engaging with people, and finding out that people are really interested in making stuff as well. So it's a great thing.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to let you get on with that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maggie Broadley, and I'm the Executive Director of Craft Town Scotland. We are here in the Barony Centre, which is a dedicated exhibition space to ceramics, both traditional and contemporary. We're delighted to be hosting Naked Craft, which is a collaborative exhibition between Canadian and Scottish makers and artists, which has been co-curated by Juliet MacDonald, and I'm delighted to welcome Juliet here. Would you like to just tell us a little bit about the development of the exhibition and some of the artists are here?
Yep, sure. Thank you. I'm one of the co-curators for the exhibition. I have another colleague from Edinburgh College of Art, where I'm based as well, and Anna Verhoeven. So he and I were the Scottish curators. And then there are 3 curators from Canada, Sandra Alfoldi from Nova Scotia, Denis Longchamp from Burlington, Ontario, and Emma Quinn, who is from Toronto in Ontario as well.
You're doing a lot better than me.
So together we have known each other for at least the last 10, 15 years or so. And whenever we got together at conferences or craft symposia or exhibitions, we would often talk about the similarities between Scotland and Canada, and where we talk about the importance of tradition in making and craft, the importance of craft for the economy, talk about similarities with Scotland and Canada in terms of being neighbours to much larger powerhouses, if you like, to America and Canada, and obviously to England here in Scotland. So we were really fascinated about many of the similarities, and we were wondering, what are the differences? So we thought it would be great to have an opportunity to get makers together, and not just to get makers together to talk about their work, but to get makers together to actually make work. So we applied for funding, and we had funding from the UK, AHRC funding, and that meant we could have a fantastic make workshop up in Lumsden at the Scottish Sculpture Workshop there. So we brought makers together, and then we managed to find funding in Canada. So we were able to do a similar thing across in Canada, and then out of that we were able to pull together the collection that you see in this beautiful space here at the Barony.
I'd like to introduce you to Jeanette Sandler, who is one of the exhibitors in the Naked Craft exhibition.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Maggie. I'm Jeanette Sandler, and I've been based in Scotland for 25 years, originally from Germany. I have grown into Scotland as a fine artist, creating, working with fibers, working with textiles, and taking on the culture and historical backgrounds of many aspects of Scotland. So my piece, I was very honored to be invited to take part in the Scottish-Canadian exchange and exhibition, Naked Craft, and I have looked into combining traditional Scottish music with traditional textiles, really, not yet art, in Scotland. So the piece notation, which you see here on the right, is an example. It's linking up music or sound waves on what you see, a strung up harp made from an old whiskey barrel, and the lines indicating a tapestry loom or a weaving loom. So textiles, the weaving history, and the music comes together in that one piece. So I'm pleased to show it here, and I'll hand you over back to Maggie.
I'd like to introduce Laura Hamilton, who is a co-opted board member of West Kilbride Community Initiative Limited, which is the parent charity of Craft Town Scotland. Laura's been a board member for over 2 years now.
That's right, yeah.
Laura's background is that she's an independent curator and writer. She was the director of Collins Gallery at Strathclyde University very successfully for a long time. So really just I'd like to ask you to give a bit of background about how you came to be a board member and just what your views are about the project and the exhibition. I should also say that Laura has been responsible for the admin and organisation and hanging of the shows in the Scottish venue.
Well, it's a pleasure to be associated with the Barony. As you know, I've been a regular visitor here, and when I stopped curating for my own gallery, it was an absolute gift to be involved at the Barony. I would say with the demise of many smaller galleries and publicly funded galleries specialising in the applied arts and crafts, that the Barony is probably the best gallery in Scotland at the moment dedicated to contemporary craft, and as such is a gem in the country's crown.
I'd like to introduce you to two very, very important people. These are our volunteers, and just to confuse us all, we have Jane here on the left, and we have June in the middle. Anyway, they're both volunteers here. Generally, people volunteer around 3.5 hours per week, although some do more than that. And really, I'd just like to start by asking you both what it's like to volunteer here, and maybe to start off with why you were attracted to volunteer with the Barony Centre in the first place.
Well, I have a real heart for arts and crafts and for people, and was really excited about what the Barony is doing, bringing arts and culture into a small village. And so that's why I come here.
How did you hear about the Barony Centre and what we were doing?
Well, I've been coming up here for visits from England for about 20 years, and I've seen the progress, and I really believe in what it's doing for the community as well as for arts and crafts. And, yeah.
June, you are one of our, in fact, you are our newest recruit,
one, yes,
so
yes.
Lovely to hear from you.
Yeah, well, I'm absolutely loving it. It's fantastic. The community spirit, it's amazing. The diversity of the arts, it's just incredible how it brings people together. It's really quite something to...
And what is it like to be in a building like?
Oh, it's amazing. It's a beautiful building. And I remember what it was like before.
Maybe you could tell our audience what it was
like
before?
It was pretty dire, pretty bad. Yes, it was needing a lot of work. It was, it's just so beautiful to think it's been restored back to even better. Yes, beautiful.
And we actually, believe it or not, where we stand now was where I used to stand, and a lot of volunteers stood for many, many years on a Saturday selling donated second-hand furniture.
Yes.
So if it weren't for all that volunteer effort, we wouldn't be here today in this award-winning building, which has been designed by Archival Architects, one of the directors who lives in the village. So it was always very important to us because we value your contribution, but we wanted this space to be inspiring, not just for artists, but for the volunteers in the community. So
I think that's what's brought the community together.
Right. And obviously, you are from far-flung parts.
Yes, I'm from Canada.
Yeah. So, and that just leads us very nicely into close that we have a Canadian and a Scottish volunteer here today at the opening of Naked Craft, which is a collaborative exhibition between Canadian and Scottish artists and makers.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed that segment there. We're joined now by Dagfinn Axnes. Before we chat to him, we're going to speak to Maggie about Craft Town Scotland. But first of all, presenting skills. Are you looking for this seat? I'll move over.
I think they're quite safe.
Great package there. But so talk to us about Craft Town Scotland, what it is and why it is so important, the impact of it.
Okay, Craft Town Scotland is a project of West Kilbride Community Initiative Limited. That's a community-led project which was established after a public meeting which was held in 1996. We have 42 retail premises within the main street of West Kilbride. At that time, 21 of those were boarded up and closed. So the community banded together to try to address that issue. It took a couple of years before the initiative proper was formed in 1998. The concept was to create a craft town, a themed craft town, to reuse some of the empty premises in the town, to also drive visitors and footfall into the village. The aim was to open craft studios which would be open to the public and encourage people to come in and meet those individual designers and makers and find out a bit more about them and how they did things, and also to purchase things directly from the maker. The whole idea was that there would be anchor points within the village, that because that's what West Kilbride's known as. If you live in West Kilbride, it's the village. And that these then would encourage other businesses to either stay or to locate within the town. There wasn't a great deal of buy-in to that from external agencies and organisations. So in 1998, the initiative took over one of the premises and had that as their base. They sold amateur crafts there. They also established a Christmas craft fair. Through the 1998-99, they also took over the management of the village hall, which was threatened with closure. They established an environmental group. Although the idea was to buy studios, they weren't getting funds to enable them to do that, so they started then with 30 hanging baskets in the town, and I always say never underestimate the power of a hanging basket, and just making the place look brighter and better. It's now stretched to 300. And to kind of get back to the point about craft in the studios, it wasn't until the Moffat Charitable Trust purchased the first 2 empty properties for us that were converted into studios that the craft town idea began to take momentum, and we shape momentum. We must really acknowledge the role of local volunteers who have then and now managed as a volunteer board of directors, and also we're in the Barony Centre, which is staffed by volunteers. So after that, Scottish Enterprise Ayrshire came on board, enabled the community to buy more studios, to then employ someone. And just over the period we further developed, we established a small exhibition space, then moved to a larger space, again driven by the local community. I think the role of creativity and crafts within communities and the potential that has to bring people together, to empower them with a sense of managing their own destiny, shouldn't be underestimated. And the role of crafts and culture within that, and defining local identity but also a national identity, is very important. There's been lots of changes over the years. The community have won various awards, starting in 2006 with Enterprise in Britain. We also won a Scottish Urban Regeneration Forum Award for the role that creativity had placed in driving the regeneration of the main street. And that has continued. But there's always been this church, the Barony Church was purchased by the community in 2000, and it was always intended to be that focal point that would help sustain the project into the future. I think it was when I became involved, I was just inspired by how much local people had done, and also proud. I'm a graduate from Glasgow School of Art from ceramics department there, proud of the role that crafts and creativity was playing in this, and I just wanted to support that, to grow with that. So it's been an amazing experience for me, and to watch these people and how they've created this in the Barony Centre. This was a long time in development. We had to raise funds from Big Lottery Scotland, another 6 funders. Creative Scotland latterly, supported us once the building opened by giving us a Creative Place Award, which was a new award then in 2012, to recognise the role of creativity to local communities and how that could drive a sense of pride and also economic regeneration within a place. So, and from that point, we've all consistently, it's not elitism. This is a venue that could be in Edinburgh, Glasgow, or indeed London, and hold its head high. We have wonderful touring shows here, but we also have a shop that supports local makers as well as national makers. So it's that kind of winning combination of the passion and commitment of local people, and also within the studios we have the passion and commitment of studio makers, whilst as if you take creative industries and crafts collectively, we're talking about 66 billion, and that's just that straight down the line contributor to the national economy. It's much more than that. Individuals don't always gain a lot of money, but what they then contribute to communities and to our creative economy far outweighs their individual gains from it.
Dagfinn, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
In a career in which you've done very many amazing things, and we'll talk about some of them later, I think it's fair to say that much of your career has been spent looking at encouraging and fostering creativity and looking at the impact and the effects of that. Is it fair to say that our education system doesn't put enough focus on creativity and encouraging young people to get involved in that?
Yes, not only in education, but I think society as a whole, creativity is an underutilized intellect, which has never, for peculiar reasons, been able to take its rightful place in academia and in industry.
And what could we be doing? How could we be doing better at that? What would we have to do to unleash that creativity that people have and are not really getting a way to express it properly?
Well, I think we have to start to learn to use the whole mind, to marry the logic, deductive mindset with the intuitive, creative mindset. And when these two pulled together, they can produce enormous results. If we look at the UK creative industries as a whole, they turn over £10 million per hour every day, day in, day out. And that's a very significant cash flow in our society. The figure comes from the UK government's own statistics, so are genuine, and the figures have been increasing steadily year by year, so there proves that there is genuine growth in this sector of the economy. And I think that we can do a lot more to increase Scotland's share of that turnover as well.
And at what stage do you start to encourage that? And I guess it's never too late, I suppose, but how early is the right time?
As early as possible. I think it was Picasso that said that all children are artists, but they stop being artists when they start taking education. So I think that observation still stands today, unfortunately.
Okay.
But resources have been reduced in schools and schools of art as well. I mean, will that have a long-term impact, do you think?
Any reduction in focusing on creativity and innovation will inevitably have an effect in the wrong direction.
Okay, we'll pick this up in 5 minutes. Meanwhile, we're going to have a short break for some music from Aidan Moody. Welcome to the show, Aidan. What are you going to be playing for us today?
I'm singing a song called Sweet Honey and Rock, which is one that I picked up from Chris Beaver, who's a fantastic trad musician from Orkney, the same as myself. It's a wee gospel song, which I think he learnt from Boo Hewarding and John McCusker. So I'm going to start with that.
40 days and 14 nights. There's too much dark and too much light. There's no wrong and there's no right in the shadow of the cross. Won't get to heaven though until you let the devil go, until you roll away the stone, sweet honey in the rock. The desert is a lonely place. You disappear without a trace. You lose your name, you have no face. All you are is lost. And the night will get so cold, the ice gets right into your soul, and you'll swear you'll never know. Sweet honey in the rock. Sweet honey in the rock. Oh, sweet honey in the rock. Do you roll away the stone? Sweet honey in the rock. Temptation's gonna come to you. Get behind all that you do. There's only one way to get through. Pray until it stops. Won't get to heaven though until you let the devil go, till you roll away the stone. Sweet honey in the rock. Sweet honey in the rock. Oh, sweet honey in the rock. Till you roll away the stone. Sweet honey in the rock. Sweet honey in the rock. Oh, sweet honey in the rock. Till you roll away the stone. Sweet honey in a rock.
Thank you for that, Aidan. That was fantastic. Look forward to hearing more from you at the end of the programme. Ronnie, MP for Inverclyde. In your constituency you have Greenock and Port Glasgow, both areas in significant need of regeneration. And we spoke together earlier about how you're working together to pull industries together. You mentioned Weevolution, about focusing on developing self-reliant businesses. Tell us a bit more about the work that's going on in your constituency to regenerate.
There's two projects I'm starting to work up. These things take a long time, and I've spent my first year as an MP learning the job and networking with lots of people. It's become apparent to me that what I'm trying to engender within the Inverclyde community is that I want to develop an attitude of an island of Inverclyde, as in we have to take care of our problems, we have to look after ourselves. And that's a community spirit which has to grow from the grassroots up. We can't do it from the top down. So in terms of the creatives within Inverclyde, I'm talking to a number of people, and hopefully we can have a constructive conversation, because some artists want to work in isolation. That's how they work best, that's their thing, they're totally focused on that. But there's lots of great examples throughout history of artists coming together as in communities and feeding off each other, the cross-pollination ideas, the empowerment that gives them. So if that's what people are looking for, I think we have to in some way, shape or form help to facilitate that within Inverclyde. We've got lots of great people, genuinely lots of great artists and theatre and the music scene as well, and what I'm looking to do is get some way of bringing them together, whether they're under one roof, whether we physically get a building, and I've got a building in mind, where we can bring people together and say this is a coherent and concerted effort at focusing all that magnificent energy, because I can't think in any time in history where artists have got together as a community and done anything negative. They always leave good things behind even when they move on to other projects. So that positive mental attitude and that idea of we can do it for ourselves, with ourselves, and build our community from the grassroots up is something I want to see happen within the creative industries within Inverclyde, and also from the more the industrial side of things as well, in regenerating Inverclyde from what has fallen from. I've looked at what I would describe as been managed decline within the area. We've got to stop that downward spiral. Once you stop it, you're going to start bringing it back up again. And that happens through creative industries, but also happens through the more traditional concept of manufacturing companies and engineering companies and distribution.
I suppose your area as well is well placed to play a leading role in the renewable sector.
Oh yeah, I look upon Inverclyde, this idea of an island of Inverclyde. I looked at what other MPs have got, and I think, well, what have they got that I've not got? What are they utilising to help regenerate the areas? What are they utilising for the positive benefit of their constituents? And Inverclyde is, of course, it's unique, but we've got a river, and from the rivers you can generate tidal energy. We don't have the tides that Swansea have, which are just astronomical, but we've got tidal energy there. So to the right scale, can we do something with that? We've got wind farms built in the right places, because the hill goes up behind Greenock, so in the right place, that's something else we can look at. And we can also look at hydro. We've had hydro for over 200 years in some way, shape or form within Inverclyde. So I don't see one solution, but I think the right mix of all the renewable energies developed properly will go a long way, could go a long way to actually generating the energy we need, but maybe more importantly in the long term, generating the technology and the knowledge which we need throughout the world to develop all those individual renewable energies. And I think Inverclyde is well placed to host all of those different types. In our city MP wouldn't have that opportunity. I've got that. I've got wind, I've got rain, I've got water, I've got tidal power, we've got biomass, already got biomass industry going in the area. So all those, if these people come and work together and share those ideas and work together towards one common goal, then I think Inverclyde could lead the way. It leads Scotland in the way initially. But I'm always very wary of this sort of Scottish cringe eye, where people have a big idea and think this could really work, we could lead the world in this, and they tend to get shot down for it.
Yeah.
Whereas this stuff, it's just us.
And somebody else does it.
Yeah.
We led the world in client-side and shipbuilding and the likes and engineering years ago, and I want to take us back there. If it's renewable energies, I think that's well suited for us, but I'm open to any ideas. What I don't see is a big multinational company landing hundreds of jobs on my doorstep. I think there are smaller companies employing fewer people and working as a cluster together. So if one company runs into difficulties, it's not a disaster for the area, as it is if one huge company closes the doors and walks away. So that clustering of ideas, clustering of engineering companies, and to think back to the original question, to the creative industries where people can come together and share, cross-pollinate, cross-fertilise, whatever, and work together for a common good. And I'd like to see the island of Inverclyde taking on those concepts and pushing them forward.
Dagfinn, you've spent many years looking at the whole notion of creativity and how to harness it. What have you learned through doing that, and what have you learned that would be useful for Scotland where it currently is?
Well, I say that innovation, which is what creates value in the economy largely, is simple because it requires just three things. It requires the creative minds, it requires a robust process, and it requires the facilities and the spaces where that inspirational work can take place. But somehow it's difficult to get all three together. So I think in Scotland today there are 8 funded innovation centres that focus on specific sectors of commerce and the economy, such as oil and gas and health. And I think the thing that's missing, which would make a vital difference for Scotland, is an innovation centre or an innovation facility which can foster the innovation process and the knowledge of how to be creative and how to come up with new ideas and think afresh generally, and empower ordinary people, not just narrow sectors in industry, but ordinary people in local communities to make use of this knowledge on a general basis. And everyone would benefit from that, and I'm sure a lot of value would be created. And with value comes jobs and provisions for school and health and housing and so on.
I was going to say, you talked there about knowledge transfer and how important that is, but I know from working with universities and centres of excellence, they don't like to share what they've created. They like to keep it for themselves because it's their knowledge. How do you foster that sharing of innovation and knowledge across the whole of Scotland and across all sectors?
Well, you're touching on an important aspect of how we organise ourselves in society. And obviously, if we have little fiefdoms that jealously guard secrets and so on, we end up with the situation that you described. But there is also a genuine sharing of information that goes on in academia through research conferences where people publish papers on their ideas and their experiments. So it's not all black and white. And I think in industry there is a certain amount of sharing of information, maybe not so much between competitors, but materials manufacturers very readily share information with people who are going to use the materials. So I think there is scope for sharing.
Maggie, how would you describe the effect of the craft town in West Kilbride? How is West Kilbride different now than it was when you first took up the job in 2004, I think it was, with the craft town?
There has been a huge difference in terms of properties within the main street. We do have very few empty units anymore. That's not to say that it's not difficult, it is. But I think if you look at small towns like ours across the country and compare West Kilbride, we are very, very favourable. We have a higher percentage of shops still in use, but it's more than that. It's about community confidence and local people working together in hand with creative people. Crafts, creative industries bring huge amounts of skills and knowledge, but also it's that confidence of feeling part of a bigger thing, and there is a big exchange of knowledge there. But West Kilbride has, won awards. Now, these awards in themselves, some people poo-poo awards, but they actually allow you to stop and take stock of what has been achieved. There are still partnerships within the village. There are lots of other groups led by volunteers that are working together. We are working with the local business group who have launched a totally locally West Kilbride. So there's encouraging local people to shop locally. So you've got that emphasis on the local and getting local people to support, and then with Craft Town and the initiative looking at that broader remit and bringing people and creativity into the village. We are constantly used as an exemplar of good practice. I mentioned SUF, there's a Development Trust Association Scotland. We are members of that too. We have had communities visit us for inspiration. We still go to other communities because it's not about, we're not a finished product. There will always be challenges, and anyone who said that this is all, suddenly there'll be a point where everything works and we don't have to input anymore, that's not going to happen. But again, it's getting back to grassroots, it's getting back to creativity and innovation. If you get things genuinely happening from the bottom up, working in partnership with other agencies, truly stunning results can be achieved. So West Kilbride still has a town centre. It's not a commuter town where people come here, get off the train, go into the houses, and there's still things going on in the main street. We have a village hall, a community centre, tennis courts newly opened. This is all through community action.
I think it's the same in Ronnie's constituency as well, isn't it? The things that work best, perhaps, are the things which people come up with themselves and have a stake in.
Yeah, exactly. They've got a stake in it, they've got ownership of it, feel responsibility for it, and then people want to see it through to it's hopefully a successful outcome. And these smaller projects, the difference Maggie used earlier on mentioned the West Kilbride Community Project Limited, and that's it. It's got to have that sort of business side to it as well. You've got to understand it's not something you can dip in and dip out of. But volunteers do an enormous amount of work within their community because it's their community. You're bringing people from outside to do a business project. It's too top level for me. That it's not the heart of it. You get local people working on local issues. When they care about it, they see the difference. People who live here in the village, and I know it's the village, it's not West Kilbride, where the village becomes Seamow, I'm not very sure how far down here you're going to get. I've never known that one. But these people have seen the difference. They've seen the difference in West Kilbride. They remember the days where those were empty units, and now they're seeing craft shops up and down there, some nice wee restaurants as well.
I suppose that as well kind of undercuts the whole Scottish cringe that you mentioned earlier. And I was wondering, like, when you came, you were originally from Norway.
Yes.
Did the Scottish cringe, did you become aware of it pretty soon after coming here, or is it something that rings any kind of bells with you? Do you understand what it means?
Well, I think when I first set feet on Scottish soil, which happened in Ardrossan from a ship from the Isle of Man in 1975, I believe, I was aware of a culture and a people that were proud, and I think that stayed with me ever since. So
the notion of we are not good enough to do things, that's not something that you've come across since you're in your time here?
No, I think I've always been lucky to be surrounded by people who think that the impossible can be done.
Ronnie, I wanted to ask about the government side of what happens. So communities pulling together and getting together, yes, it works, and things happen quite quickly when you're in a community and it's small and you're in charge yourselves. From a government perspective, Chris Law stood up in Parliament this week. He was talking about the games industry, and it's an important part of the creative sector in Scotland. Dundee, obviously, with Grand Theft Auto and Lemmings and all the good stuff coming out of there. But he was raising the point about things like tax relief and the post-study work visa that we don't have anymore. And when is government going to start to move towards fixing that side of things to support what's happening at a local level?
Governments are very good at paying lip service to these things, but money talks. And ultimately they're going to see businesses as being ways of generating revenue for government. And what they've got to do is try and leave some of that money back in the community so it's actually generating. So if you leave it, rather than taking the money, put it into central and bring it back again, leave it in the community in the first place. Because these are, again, the people who know best how to spend that money in their community. So yeah, Chris has got a very, very good point there. and that it's how it's managed, and I think a lot of that comes from government having confidence in people rather than wanting to control all the budget themselves.
And how do the ideas that that drove the Arts Town, how could they be rolled out across Scotland, Maggie? How could they help us in a wider context?
I think it's just what's been said is that it's about actually giving local people control and support to manage their own services. I mean, there are moves towards developing this locality planning, but again, money talks, and there has been a huge amount achieved in West Kilbride, and up until the Barony Centre, through relatively low cost to the public purse. It's actually, if you look at the benefits of the centre, then even that still is relatively low cost. That could be, there could be seed corn funding for communities. You should also recognise that different communities are made up, they have different characters, different skill sets. Some will be at different stages in terms of banding together, to drive things forward, so there has to be support on that level. But it's courage and confidence of government to apportion money to allow people to get on and do the things themselves.
Dagfinn, presumably it takes more than money though.
Yeah, well, I think we can see around in the world examples of money being used in different directions that aren't necessarily helpful to the communities where the activities take place. But I think the education of young people and also higher education has a big role to play in promoting enterprise. And in Glasgow there are today something like 10 companies that were generated out of the product design engineering course where I taught for 17 years, and they're all still active, and they produce design facilities and design consultancies. Without these companies, Glasgow would be a much poorer place.
Because there's a problem with creativity in some ways, isn't there? Because Creative Scotland's new strategy, which came out last week, showed the difficulty many artists find in making a living. I think only 2% earned as much as 20 grand. Most of them were from like 4 or 5,000 a year, which is not enough to live on. Yes. You are looking at ways of harnessing creativity to make money and to make products which are better as a result of that. Yeah. How is that difficult to make sure that here's a great idea, let's make money out of it?
Well, I was fortunate to work with Professor Leif Edvinsson from Lund University in Sweden. He used to work for the insurance industry, and he came up with the concept of intellectual capital, which is now today an internationally recognized economic model, which puts the humans in focus and focus on the value created by the intellect. And therefore he's able to put value to what artists and designers do. And if you employ such a model, then it becomes easier to see the cash flow which is generated by the creative industries, and to account for them or for that money in generating new businesses. And I think you're right in what you're saying. It isn't the big corporations who are going to produce growth. It is the SMEs, the small companies, the enterprises, and the startups. And by making more and more of them through incubation, through facilities such as this centre and other innovation centres, we can actually build an economy which is stronger and has more growth than we have today.
Sounds a good note to
sounds
finish
a good
on.
note. Dagfinn, Maggie, Ronnie, thank you so much. We've really enjoyed that conversation.
And we're going to close with
some more music.
From Aidan.
Aidan Moody.
Indeed, from Orkney. I don't know when's the Orkney Folk Festival, is it finished now?
End of May.
End of May, yeah. It's supposed to be a great event.
That's fantastic.
Were you there this year?
Yeah, I managed to get up from Glasgow, so I managed every time I've been in uni so far. So
Excellent. Look forward to that.
The festival to have is the home one.
So you play in a duo, right?
Yes, yeah. We're in a duo called Nuts. It's me and another Arcadian, and we've got an album out as well.
Really?
Yeah, so you can find that through our Facebook page.
Okay.
Facebook.com/NOS Music, if anybody's interested.
Good luck with that. What are you going to play for us now?
I'm going to finish in a bluegrass song, an American one written by Walt Aldridge called No Ash Will Burn. So.
I have seen snow that falls in May. I have seen rain on cloudless days. Some things are always bound to change. There ain't no ash will burn, 'cause love is a precious thing, I'm told. It burns just like West Virginia gold. But when the fire dies down, it's cold. There ain't no ash will burn. You say this life is not your lot, but I can be something that I'm not. We can't stoke a fire that we haven't got. There ain't no ash will burn, 'cause love is a precious thing, I'm told. It burns just like West Virginia coal. But when the fire dies down, it's cold. There ain't no ash will burn. In every life there comes a time when there are no more hills to climb. We must leave something dear behind. There ain't no ash will burn, 'cause love is a precious thing, I'm told. It burns just like West Virginia coal. But when the fire dies down, it's cold. There ain't no ash will burn. There is one thing that I have learned. There ain't